your numbers news to me. I believed it was somewhere around 10,000. I was seeing something about this past weekend, 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers killed just in a weekend. Russia is saying that about 30% of the weaponry, of the tanks and the armored vehicles and all of these things that the NATO countries have been pumping into Ukraine have been destroyed. And this is just since this has only been happening for less than 3 weeks now, Scott, this so-called counteroffensive. Where is it? Because we're hearing pause. We're hearing now you have Ukraine's defense ministry saying, well, this is just the first counteroffensive. There's going to be many more. This is not the be all end all. Zelensky's kind of saying the same thing. It's tough right now, but this isn't a movie, right? There's all kinds of, I think, just shape shifting going on with the narrative. But what's the reality? Can you go over like what's been happening, why it's been happening, and why? It almost feels like Ukraine expected Russia to run. Maybe they thought this was June of 2022 again, and that the strategy was going to be the same by Russia. But it feels like Russia is really hunkering down, and they were really I don't know how they couldn't be prepared. It was being forecasted for about 4 or 5 months. But could you talk about what's been going on with this counteroffensive?
Sure. First of all, let's just understand that when we use the term counteroffensive, I think it's not as descriptive as it needs to be. Because it, like you said, brings back flashbacks to September of 2022 when the Ukrainians launched another counteroffensive and they succeeded in pushing the Russians out of the Kharkov region, out of the right bank of Kherson. And so people are like, oh, well, it's just going to be a continuation of that. It's not the case. The Russians have done what they didn't do back then, which is to dig in doctrinally to build triple layer defenses fully manned with doctrinal minefields, obstacle belts, have fire support in place, everything by the book. And this means that what the Russians have constructed is probably the most heavily fortified defensive barrier in modern history. And I bring that up because what the Ukrainians are being asked to do is carry out an assault designed to breach a fortified defensive position. And in the military, this is perhaps the most difficult mission that you can be given. It requires extraordinary courage, but it also requires a tremendous amount of military skill, not just in terms of the breachers, but the people who support breachers. You see, in Western doctrine, American doctrine, NATO doctrine, the first thing that has to happen as you attempt a breach of a defensive fortified position, it's what's called suppression. You see, because as you approach the defensive line, you're going to hit an obstacle belt, minefields. That means that you're going to have to work your way to create paths through the minefields. But while you're doing that, you are vulnerable. You're at risk of being hit by enemy artillery, enemy air, enemy guided missiles, and anti-tank missiles. So as your troops enter into this place and become very vulnerable, you have to suppress the enemy's ability to interdict and disrupt this assault. This means that the Russians have a very viable active air force. The Ukrainians would have to sweep the skies of the Russian Air Force. That's not happening, which means that the Russian aircraft are able to bring their firepower to bear on the Ukrainians even before they get to the contact zone with the minefield. So in their initial assembly area, the Russians are able to hit them with 500 kilogram planed bombs. That's precision guided bombs that are striking the Ukrainians as they assemble. So they're being killed in huge numbers here. Equipment's being destroyed even before they get to the front line, because the Ukrainians can't suppress that because they don't have an air force. Now we come to the next thing. As you're there, the helicopters come out. The Ka-52 alligators are having a field day. They're out there just knocking things off right and left. Why? Because Ukrainians aren't able to suppress them with air defense. You see, before you send your ground forces in to this fortified area, you need to ensure that you've projected a integrated air defense system over the battlefield that keeps these Russian helicopters from flying. In the lead up to this counteroffensive, Russia has carried out the most intensive and successful suppression of enemy air defense campaign in modern history. They have eradicated in totality any meaningful air defense capacity on the part of the Ukrainians, which means that these helicopters fly free of charge. They're just up there killing everything that moves, and they're not getting shot down at all. The other thing you have to suppress, of course, is the Russian artillery. Now, this was always going to be a difficult problem because the Russians enjoy 7-1, 10-1 advantage in artillery, plus they have virtually unlimited ammunition compared to the Ukrainians. But let's say the Ukrainians were able to bring in sufficient resources so that they could have parity with the Russians in this one limited area on the battlefield. You need to fire and suppress the Russians. It's not just about hitting them with firepower. You have to suppress their ability to communicate. So electronic warfare has to come in. You have to prevent the troops that are on the ground who say, hey, we got enemy tanks in front of us, fire Whiskey Tango 1001, which is a predetermined fire coordinate. But now they're trying to communicate. They can't because it's jammed. So the artillery can't fire because they haven't heard the signal. That's called suppression. That's not happening. Why? The Ukrainians don't have electronic warfare. They don't have artillery. So what I've said right now is in doctrine, the suppression aspect is the most important aspect. Without suppression, nothing else will happen. And everybody knew that the Ukrainians were unable to suppress the Russians. So why would they commit an attack that is literally an act of suicide if they knew this going in? And they knew because there is no Ukrainian Air Force. The Ukrainian air defense has been annihilated. The Ukrainian artillery is insufficient to the task, and the Ukrainians don't have effective electronic warfare. So why did they launch this attack? Because they were told that the Russians are going to run away. They were told that the Russians have ineffective command and control. They were told that the Russians just don't have their act together. They're not very good. But again, that's something that everybody should have known is malarkey. Why? Well, the general that initiated the construction of these defenses was General Sertovokin, a very competent general. He built doctrinal defenses. So people are looking at triple layer defenses. If you study Russian doctrine, you know that Russia specializes in defensive warfare. That's their strength. It's defense in depth. So you can anticipate that. The Russian defenses were built in accordance with a modified defensive doctrine that was created by somebody named Colonel General Alexander Romanchuk. He used to be a deputy commander of the 58th Combined Arms Army during the initial phases of this conflict. He was experienced in the reality of the conflict in Ukraine, including NATO equipment being provided to Ukrainians. So he was sent to the Combined Arms Academy, which is the big military school for the Russians, where he modified existing defensive doctrine to take into account the new developments in warfare. And he wrote an article, it was published in March, that said, this is our new approach. And then they pulled him out of the academy and they put him in command of the Zaporizhia front. So the guy who invented modern Russian defensive warfare is in command of defenses that were designed based upon his input, and they've put in place Russian troops trained to his standards. So the Russians have everything there, and we knew this. We knew they were ready for us. They've been waiting for several months. Why did we attack? This is the key question here, because this attack never had a chance to succeed, ever. And every NATO planner involved in this knew it. Every American general involved in this knew it. We deliberately sacrificed the Ukrainians. And you have to ask yourself, why? What is the purpose? And here's the sickest part of the answer. Because as we talked about earlier, Putin has talked about a 10-1 casualty ratio. This may go up because the Russians are literally dominating every aspect of this conflict. But again, 13,000 dead Ukrainians equates to 1,300 dead Russians. That's the pain that the West is trying to inflict on Russia, because it is painful. It's real pain. It's a lot of deaths. We couldn't absorb that many casualties in America. We'd be crying our eyes out if we brought that many body bags home. Well, why would we do this? Well, the answer again lies with Anne Applebaum. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a anti-Putin Russophobe who writes for the New Yorker magazine, and for no, I mean, I'm sorry, the Atlantic. She's a staff writer for the Atlantic. Used to write for the Washington Post. She recently wrote an article about the Russian offensive, and how the Russians have to lose. They have no choice but to lose. That the Ukrainians will win. But she alluded to a theory that has, in order to reduce the casualty or the impact of this conflict on the West, that there will be a marriage between NATO technology and Eastern European manpower. This is direct from a 1993 article written by George Soros, where he said the same thing. In order to confront the Russians effectively, NATO has to avoid losing people, because democracies don't do well when body bags come home. So in order to inflict pain on the Russians, we have to come up with a system where we have Eastern European manpower married to NATO technology, and we use them in a conflict with the Russians to kill Russians. And that's what's happening today. This is something that's been conceptualized by these sick-minded neoconservative types for decades now. But think about it. We're happy killing 1,300 Russians. How happy are we? I don't know. Ask Lindsey Graham. He said it's the best investment we've ever made as Americans, putting all this money into Ukraine to kill Russians. And he's willing to do it to the last Ukrainian, which means that we don't care what it costs Ukraine. We don't care that Ukraine is losing 10 times as many men. All we want is the pain caused to Russia. That's the sickest aspect of this, is that we're willing to sacrifice an entire nation, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men, just to inflict pain on Russia. But let me give you another hint, America. I was in Russia in the lead up to Victory Day, May 9th. I attended the practice, the rehearsal of the Victory Day parade. I saw firsthand the pride that Russia has about its military, and throughout Russia, all Russians were rallying around the concept of Victory Day. I was in Volgograd. I went up to Mamayev Kurgan. I saw the motherland calls, the big statue of Mother Russia beckoning people forward. That statue is on a hill underneath which is 35,000 dead Soviet soldiers who died in the Battle of Stalingrad. Beneath that statue is another statue of the grieving mother holding her dead son, where the tears from her eyes filled up a pond. Leading up to that is the Avenue of Heroes, where you see the sacrifice made. The Russians know sacrifice. They know sacrifice unlike anything the West will ever experience. If we think we can inflict pain on Russia, we can't. These people know pain. They don't want pain. The Russian heart is real. These people feel pain. They weep. They're in sorrow, but they don't shirk from their duty. They don't shirk from their responsibility. They feel right now that they are in a war of existential survival against the collective West, and they are willing to pay whatever price necessary to prevail, to survive, not to defeat us. Their goal isn't to defeat the West. Their goal is to survive, and survive they will. And here comes the scariest part, because Vladimir Putin has said that the nuclear doctrine of Russia is such that they won't use nuclear weapons unless the existential survival of Russia is threatened. The United States has a policy of achieving the strategic defeat of Russia. We are empowering the Ukrainians to strip away territories that Russia considers to be Russia. I don't care what the West thinks about this. We have to understand from the Russian perspective, Crimea is Russia. Kherson is Russia. Zaporizhia is Russia. Donetsk is Russia, Lugansk is Russia. So if we are seeking a policy designed to strip these territories away from Russia, that is an existential threat to Russia. One that, if we were to succeed, means that Russia would use nuclear weapons in response. It's a suicide pact we've entered in with the Ukrainians. That's how stupid we are. But here's the deal. We're not going to succeed in doing that. The counteroffensive proves that. But we may seek to prolong this conflict to bring harm to Russia. So there's a growing feeling amongst Russian academics and Russian policy experts that a forever war with the West over Ukraine is not in Russia's best interest, that the West maybe could wear Russia down to where Russia could be strategically defeated. And then nuclear war would become an inevitability. So what the Russians are saying is we need to develop a preemptive nuclear strategy to preempt this outcome, that if the West decides that it wants to continue a forever war using Ukraine as the proxy designed to bring pain to Russia, to bring about the strategic defeat of Russia, then we have no choice but to preempt this with nuclear weapons. And there's talk about using a nuclear weapon against a NATO member to strike them, to take out a city. And then in doing so, daring the United States to step up and defend NATO. Because the gamble is that the United States will not trade Boston for Poznan, Poznan being a Polish city, hypothetically struck by a nuclear weapon. Now, I don't want this to happen. I think this is stupid because it creates the potential for an all-out nuclear exchange and we all die. But my point is that the United States, because of our policies, are pushing the Russians to consider preempt. Now, people need to understand that the Russians wouldn't be the first people to have a preemptive nuclear policy. We've had it. We've had it since after 9/11. George W. Bush revamped our nuclear posture to include preemptive nuclear strikes in a non-nuclear environment. Barack Obama, that wonderful bastion of democracy, of this, greatest president ever, not, he, said, I'm against this. He had 8 years to change it. He didn't. He couldn't. He wouldn't. Donald Trump came in and not only kept the policy, but expanded upon it. There's a senior Trump administration defense official who, and this is a quote, said, the purpose of our preemption policy is to ensure that every morning the Russians and Chinese wake up not knowing whether or not we're going to nuke them today. That's an honest to God quote. That's the thinking. Now, Joe Biden said, I'm going to run on a platform that seeks to do away with that we're going to go back to the sole purpose doctrine, which is the sole purpose of American nuclear weapons is nuclear deterrence, that we would only use nuclear weapons if deterrence failed and people struck us, then we would hit them back with overwhelming force, guaranteeing that they no longer survive. Therefore, that is the deterrence. If you hit us, you die. But that we would not preemptively use nuclear weapons. But as soon as he became president, he ran into the reality that the American nuclear weapons establishment said, no, we're not going to do that. Yes, they rejected the president's instructions, which tells you a lot about the power and influence of the nuclear, the nuclear lobby in America today. We have a policy of nuclear preemption. And the Russians are now waking up saying, maybe it would be good if every morning the Americans woke up and the Europeans woke up not knowing whether or not we're going to nuke them. Because turnaround's a fair play. But here's the thing. If we continue a policy of promoting the strategic defeat of Russia, and Russia does go to a policy of preemption, I can guarantee you this, Russia will nuke us. They will, because the Russians don't play games. The Russians don't mess around. If Russia makes a policy decision to bring in a policy of nuclear preemption, and it's designed to preempt actions by potential enemies or real enemies that seek the strategic defeat of Russia, and that they are taking actions to achieve the strategic defeat of Russia, then Russia has the necessity, according to this policy, to preempt that using nuclear weapons. So it's a guarantee of nuclear war. This is how stupid the American people are. Because I can guarantee you, everybody tonight went to bed thinking, man, I just saw Guardians of the Galaxy 3 over the weekend. What a great movie. Rocky, Rocket Raccoon, man, I'm crying over that. I hope Quill comes back, or they could come up with any other number of things. My TikTok got a lot of views. My Instagram, I got a lot of likes on that. They're thinking about everything except the fact that the world's going to end. You're going to die. You're going to die because your government's doing stupid things in your name. And what are you doing about it? Not a damn thing, because you're not thinking about it. You better wake up. All you who put Ukrainian flags on your social media as part of virtue signaling. You're supporting a government that wants our government to commit suicide by backing them do something that will trigger a Russian nuclear response. Okay? That's the reality. So take the damn flag off your social media, pull the flag down, and turn to the American government and say, we're not willing to die for Ukraine. Because I'm telling you right now, if you are willing to die for Ukraine, why are you here? Why are you at home? Buy a damn airline ticket, go over there and die already. The Russians are more than happy to make your dreams come true. But don't bring me with it. Don't bring my family with it. Don't bring my friends with it. Don't bring my neighborhood with it. We don't want to die. And that's what's going to happen if we continue this policy. Straight up, I'm telling you, we are closer to nuclear war today than we have ever been. And this is because of this desire of Russia to preempt American strategic objectives to bring about the strategic defeat of Russia. Russia, Vladimir Putin has said that a world without Russia isn't a world worth living in. Think about that. So if we seek the strategic defeat of Russia, that's a world without Russia. And Putin said, I don't want to live in that world, which means he's going to kill us all. That's what nuclear weapons are supposed to deter. We have the same philosophy, trust me. A world without America isn't worth living in. So if somebody seeks the strategic defeat of America, they will probably feel the sting of our nuclear weapons. That's what they exist for, to prevent America from disappearing. So we'd be against Russians or Chinese. We'd be all riled up if Russia said our national policy is to achieve the strategic defeat of the United States, and we're doing everything possible. We're going to create a proxy war in Mexico designed to rile up Mexican Americans. We want unrest in every American city. We want to collapse the American economy. And we'd say, whoa, whoa, whoa. No, you don't. We're not going to let that happen. And if you continue to pursue that, we might have to preempt you with nuclear weapons. Turnaround's fair play, guys. What we're doing to the Russians is the worst possible thing, and we would never allow it to happen against us. And the Russians' response is a logical response, one that we would do if we were put in the same situation. Russia will nuke a NATO nation if this continues. And then the United States is going to be confronted with the quandary. Do we respond? Do we really want to see that question answered? No. So let's stop the stupidity. Let's stop this insanity. Let's stop supporting Ukraine.
Yeah, no, I mean, everything you say is so logical, especially just given how this all started, how this was a provocation, and how now we're seeing through this so-called counteroffensive, just the utter it's like insanity, it's cynicism. I mentioned earlier, you have Ukrainian officials, you have the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Denis Shmyhal, saying things like, oh, we're actually not doing so well in the counteroffensive because we care about life, because we care about the life of Ukrainians. They're trying to say that they're doing what Russia was doing early on in the conflict, which was and still to this day, minimizing casualties as much as possible. Meanwhile, the West is admitting that there are thousands upon thousands of Ukrainian soldiers dying seemingly by the week. So this makes a lot of sense. And Putin said it recently too. He said there's limitations to this. No matter how many weapons are given to Ukraine, they're going to eventually face a manpower problem. Could you talk about this and maybe connect it to this last point that you made? Because if there's a manpower problem, if the conflict is being made permanent by NATO, and which then leads to this question of will there be a nuclear confrontation? It seems like this manpower question is very much connected to how fast that scenario could play out, because NATO isn't stopping. They're not calling for peace. They're saying that the only, NATO countries, the US especially, they're saying that the only peace plan worth pursuing is Zelensky's. And we all know that's not a peace plan. That is just war by other means.
I don't want to oversimplify war, because at the end of the day, it's humans killing humans, and it's this visceral, and it's tragic, and it's ugly, and it should be avoided at all costs. But war is a giant algorithm. There are knowns, probability kill factors based upon training, equipment, terrain, the whole thing. And the Russians have a military that, let's call it its PK factor, probability kill factor, has maintained its statistical values, or even gotten better. I would say it's gotten better. So the Russian military has become more lethal, and a part of that is the quality of the soldier, meaning that the soldiers are well trained, they've received sufficient training, they're well equipped, they know how to use this equipment, they're well led, and they work together as a coherent team. And when you work as a team, let's say that we have a system in place where a certain amount of lethality is coming down. So you enter into this environment, if you're part of a well-trained team that has tactics and equipment and methodologies designed to minimize the probability of kill, you can enter into this environment and survive longer because you're more efficient in avoiding damage. You can absorb the damage. You make the right decisions. But to do that requires a lot of training, a lot of experience, etc. The Ukrainians started this conflict with a very well-trained, well-equipped, well-led military, 260,000 strong. So when they entered into this death-dealing environment, they were able to last a little bit, but eventually they got ground down. Now, what happens is you have to replace the people that die. Now, if you replace them with people who are of similar quality, you can maintain that coefficient that keeps your survivability factors up. But when you start replacing them with people who don't have the training, who don't have the experience, who don't have the knowledge and the equipment, then basically your casualty figures will go up. The algorithm will be adjusted, which means your survivability is different. You're going to be wearing out your people faster, which means then there's a necessity to replace them quicker with people who aren't as well trained. And so even if you can keep putting the people in, they're going to die at a greater rate because they've lost all of that combat survivability factor that existed when you're well trained, well equipped, well led. Today we have Ukrainians that are being given this modern equipment. They don't know how to use it. They're being asked to employ this equipment in tactical schemes, operational schemes, combined arms warfare that they don't know how to do. It takes a long time to learn how to do this. And these are people who don't have sufficient military experience. They're poorly led. You can't have a battalion commander that's 25, 26 years old and tell me that he's great because he only has 4 years experience in the military. Where are your NCOs? They're all dead. Where are your junior officers? They're all dead. You've replaced them with people that don't have any experience, and they're coming in large numbers, which means the unit itself has zero survivability built in. So even though the Ukrainians are mobilizing right now, they're going to pin up another 70,000 troops. When these troops are put into combat, they're not going to have the same survivability as those original 70,000 that existed in 2022. They're going to die quicker, and then the demand will come to replace them. And eventually, this is unsustainable, and that's the fact for the Ukrainians. They're being slaughtered on the battlefield, and it's only going to get worse. You cannot reverse this tide. That's what I'm trying to say here. Is once you get this algorithm going, unless you insert people who have extensive experience, know how to use the equipment, and are competent in the tactics that they're talking about, so that you reduce the lethality effect of the environment on that, it's just going to get worse because you're putting in people with less training, less experience, etc., which means the lethality factor goes up. And the more it goes up, the quicker it churns through, the quicker you have to replace, the more it's going to go up. This is a killing algorithm that once it gets functioning, means that the Ukrainians are going to burn through everything they have. And that's what's happening right now. They're running out of manpower because they're all dying.